Hello, you malternative mixers of the multiverse. Quite a nice little malt mention there from Christian Atala. Thank you, Christian. And welcome all you malt mates to the Bothy. I'm Ralphie, and this is Ralphie Review 931, which is part of a short series focusing on single malt whiskies that are 18 years of age, because that's what it says in the label. And the reason I like age statements is because it's disclosure. It gives you information to let you understand what you're tasting. And importantly, the information is on the label, on the bottle, which contains the whisky we have bought. Right? Now, I bought this whisky. I'm just giving it a minute or two to open up in the glass. It's 18-year-old whisky. It takes longer than 12-year-old whisky or younger whisky. But anyway, I bought this whisky. This is my wallet, an old-fashioned leather wallet. I've stitched it up over the decades. I bought it in the 1980s because it's the right size for holding cash flat without folding it over or squashing it up or getting it crumpled. Right, so, okay. Now, I want to show you in cash. I know it's a bit old-fashioned, but I'm a cash person. In cash, what I paid for this bottle of whisky. Right, so now these are £20 notes. This money is money I have earned and I have paid tax on. And every time I buy a bottle of whisky, I'm starting to pay tax again. First as duty, and then secondly as value-added tax, which is also placed on the duty which is raised in tax. So I've paid my tax to get this money, and then I'm being taxed on tax when I buy a bottle of liquor. This is one reason why the cost of a bottle of whisky is a sensitive issue. And with all the changes that are happening in June 2022, which is the point at which this video goes live on YouTube, there's an awful lot changing quite dramatically on the global stage. There is a huge amount of inflation. The cost of energy and materials is not just rising, it's rocketing. We are entering very turbulent times. And during these turbulent times, it's cash like this. But I have to be more careful and more considerate how I spend. And that, by the way, is why I'm reviewing 18-year-old whiskies now. Because in this time next year, I am not prepared to pay the price for them anymore. And I'll just be regularly reviewing young whiskies. 21-year-old whiskies, they're gone. 25-year-old whiskies, they're gone, they're done. I am not prepared to overpay for a bottle of whisky simply on the value that the producer sets on it that I am expected to just go with. You see, what I want to go with is paying my money, but getting the quality. Right. Now, £120 in my book is as far as I would ever stretch for a bottle of 18-year-old whisky. So you won't see me reviewing Tamdhu 18-year-old. It's not going to happen, malt mates, although it's a decent whisky. It's too damn expensive. But what is this bottle of Bunnahabhain worth? I'll tell you what it's really worth. In terms of smell and taste in relation to money, I'm going to show you at the end of this video what it's really worth to me. Let's put the money aside. I mustn't lose it. I need it. I need that money for buying whisky. 18 years old, natural colour, bottled, without being chill filtered. It says so on the label down at the bottom in little gold letters. which I really, really appreciate. Natural colour, non-chill filtered. Do you know, I've got a long history with Bunnahabhain. It's the malt that I used to drink in a little bar in Dumbarton Road in Glasgow when I lived in Partick, near to the River Clyde. Oh my goodness, very fond memories of these years. Very nostalgic now, because it was in the 1980s and the early 1990s. And I used to get a wee nip of the malt because it was only about 30 pence a glass dearer than the blended whisky, and it's single malt. And the reason it was in the bar was because a lot of Highland people went to the bar, and a lot of Highland folk in the west coast of Scotland, their favourite dram wasn't Laphroaig, Ardbeg, Bowmore. No. It was Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. And it was bottled at 40%, and sure, it was chill filter. It was chill filter, and it was kind of relatively naturally coloured. But in those days, it really was a delightful, soft, relatively unpeated whisky. It was beautiful. I'm going to tell you about Bunnahabhain, my travels with Bunnahabhain, in my next extras coming along after this video. And so I've done 11 reviews of Bunnahabhain over the years. And my last review of Bunnahabhain 18-year-old was in May 2017, so about 5 years ago, in which, in review 647, I awarded it 87 points out of 100. Now, I'd reviewed it back in 2014, so 8 years ago I reviewed earlier versions of the 18-year-old in May 2014. In Ralphie Review 453, where I gave it 90 out of 100, it was a really, really impressive whisky in those days because you could just tell there was good cask in it. How are we getting on, malt mates, in 2022? Let's find out. Nose. Raisin. Slightly peaty, actually. There's a little iodine nip, a little peat nip in this. The sort of nose that I would expect for a Bunnahabhain that had been put into mature in an ex-Bunnahabhain cask that used peated Bunnahabhain. It's called Stoisha, just as a point of reference. So Stoisha is the generic trade term for peated Bunnahabhain. So they're maturing peated and unpeated Bunnahabhain at the distillery, and then they're emptying the peated casks, and they're saying, well, I tell you what, we'll put some of the new make into these ex-peated casks. So just give a little crisp, peaty edge to the Bunnahabhain. So if you find that little edge of peatiness on your Bunnahabhain, that's an explanation as to why. It's one explanation, because it's one option. The nose, some old cask in here, getting some old generation wood, really quite well poised. What I'm smelling is something that is 18-year-old. So I'm getting a good point of reference off the information on the label. Raisin, sherry casks, absolutely. Some scorched toffee, a little bit of mint, mild mint. Fire embers, yeah. Smell you get off a cooling fire that's gone out for a few hours. Quite crisp and quite tannic. And then there's something slightly umami and flat in the nose, as if the crispness of the tannins is being suppressed. So we'll taste it neat. This is bottled, by the way, at 46.3%. So a good integrity presentation. A slow, methodical, pleasant, sherried, slightly oily arrival. A slight fish oil note, actually. Something slightly marine in here. Something quite slightly salty as well. But a surprisingly short development. In terms of the form, you get this kind of rush at the arrival. Then very quickly it fades into some slightly sherbety tannins, numbing the tongue slightly. And you're asking yourself, well, actually, where's the main event? So we're going to add some water now. Let's chase out that main event. Now, a word of advice. This whisky does not take a lot of water. Seriously, it doesn't. I'm adding 1 milliliter. So I'm adding maybe a dozen drops of water, that's all. Now, this may surprise some Ralphie regulars because, in fact, this is probably the least water I have added to any whisky in the last year. There's a reason. This whisky very quickly drowns. It's very easy to drown this whisky by adding what you think's an ordinary amount of water, and suddenly it kind of flatlines. It's very telling. It tells you something important. And particularly when you've tasted it neat and you've had this arrival but no development as such, and then this kind of slightly jarring finish, it tells you something else. It tells you that a proportion of the casks used in assembling this batch were fairly stale casks and a bit flat. Well, that is what it's telling me. So, as always, because it's in the description in the box down below before anybody kicks off, this is purely a personal perspective and opinion. But I'm telling you right now, malt mates, I've been at this over 30 years. I know what I'm looking at here. What you have to do is, as soon as you identify any bottle which you've got the guidance of the age statement, you've got the guidance of the presentation, and thank goodness this is integrity, otherwise this would collapse in a heap if it was at 40%. It really would. But I'm just going to have to say it. This isn't as good as the previous two versions that I've reviewed, no doubt about it. The quality of the casks used in the batch construction there's a proportion of these casks not as good and as consistent as they used to be. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see an increasing trend of this right across the industry. And I'm generalising, so accept it as a general statement. This is one reason why you stock up your stash when you've got the cash, because see the way things are going out there, prices can only go up. And it is better that you have to cut down in buying your whisky in the knowledge that you've already bought up stuff that you absolutely know is good. When you open that bottle, you know what it is, you know the quality, you know you're not going to be disappointed. This is the purpose of the stash. I don't have this in the stash, but I've got some old 12 years old in the stash. There you go. In my own stash. I'll be delving into my stash for my forthcoming live stream, by the way, which I do for my Patreon subscribers, for those who subscribe in my Patreon channel at patreon.com to Ralphie, R-A-L-F-Y. Okay. It'll be happening on Wednesday the 15th, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm actually going to be just having deep dive into whiskies I have in my collection purely for drinking. It's a little bit better. See, adding that drop of water, not too much. It's bringing out the barley sugar. It's starting to open up the arrival a little bit more. It's shaking down the stress notes in that whisky that have been caused by some less than ideal casks included in the batching. And so we're making some progress here. But I've got to move things along now because we're all pretty busy with our own malt moments. Nose again. More aromatic, floral, slightly perfumed, eau de cologne, barley sugar, touch of vanilla, muscovado, brown sugar, more seasoned, rounded sherry notes and raisiny notes in there. A little touch of wintergreen and menthol, something slightly aromatic and vegetal. And floral, vegetal floral, almost slightly rice wine. Taste. What an improvement. The arrival's bigger, it's more complex. The development is bigger, massively bigger. The finish, it's got more flavour in that tannic crispness. It's not as biting and chilly hot on the tongue at the finish. A small amount of water has made a huge difference, but see the development. Got the nice big generous arrival, showing a lot of promise. Then we move into the development, and that barley sugar's doing the talking, surrounded by a little bit of herbal, spicy, raisiny, sherryish, and then something comes in that's like old rice wine, and it just kind of starts to kill off. Just suddenly kills off the flavours that are developing in the development, and then they just fade. They just suddenly, the whole thing goes rapidly downhill into a slightly longer finish, but not a particularly dramatic finish. Is casks. Now, what mark would I give this? Here we are, 82 out of 100, and that, me maltsters, is an integrity malt mark. Right, now, get my cash out. I've got to spend this wisely. There's £120 there. If you want to know how it converts into your own currency, just go on to a search box and just put currency converter, and it will tell you exactly, it'll do all the calculations for you to the very moment of the value of the currency. So £120 there. So that's what I paid for this bottle, but having tasted that, what do I think it's worth? And this is just a personal opinion, so let's just remove 120 and let's remove 220s. Absolute tops, that's worth maybe about £80. That's £80 worth of 18-year-old whisky. If all the casks in that batch were on point and doing what they're supposed to do, I'd give you £100 for it. But there's some poor performing casks in here. And the thing is, you go out there and start searching around, particularly younger age, you can get some seriously good whiskies for that £60, half what I paid for that will give me a better experience, even though they're younger. Deanston, Arran, my goodness, I could even buy a bottle of Springbank if I could find one for this. Or Kilkerran, Ardnamurchan, Chorriveg. What's my parting shot here, malt mates? What am I saying here? Take more time to select good whiskies before you spend your money. Now, there's people in the Scotch whisky industry say, there's that pest, that nuisance, that disruptive little mongrel in the bothy. There he is, trying to spoil the party. I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Because the more whisky fans out there that feel that they're not getting value for money and they're overspending in relation to the quality of whisky they're buying, the more they're inclined to go and try other spirits or stop buying whisky at all. Yet they'll say nothing. They're not in the position I'm in, where I have an audience and I get watched and observed and my opinion gets listened to. So I've got to speak on behalf of the quiet ones, because there's a growing mood within the informed whisky scene where people are getting fed up. It's not even so much the price that's being charged, it's the quality that's being bottled in relation to the price that's being charged. Especially what is generically called bad batches. Bad batches are far more tolerable when whisky's cheaper. When the price of whisky gets too much, Bad batches cannot be tolerated, and the best way to avoid the risk is not to buy whisky. Whisky industry, listen to what I'm saying. I'm trying to help here. I'm Ralphie. Thank you for watching. Pop back again for my next review, 931 Extras, in which I shall be telling you about my journey with Bunnahabhain. Interesting little journey, actually. It's a very long one, and I'll show you a few of the bottles out my stash, just a couple of bottles of what I've got and why. Bye.